All right. So we are now at the big highlight of the workshop, which is our panel on sustainable AI. And I would like to take this moment to invite our speakers onto stage. First off, in no particular order, we have Hussein from Beyond Limits, who's also going to take one of the seats over here. Then we have Professor Mohammed El Hosseini from KAUST. Okay. And then Alex Alapa from In Silico Medicine. And Sankalp Arora, who I guess you're the CEO of Gather AI, correct? Great. And then, so the moderator for our panel is going to be Auric, who was the speaker for Petrum yesterday. So Auric, would you like to kickstart our panel?
All right, thanks everyone. Thanks to all of our speakers who agreed to be on the panel today. So today's panel is on sustainability in AI. Right, so with everything that's going on in the AI world and everything, all the advancements that we've seen in the recent months and will continue to see in the next coming months, sustainability has never been a more relevant topic than it is today. So hopefully we'll have very insightful discussions with our panel today, right? So before we get started, maybe I want to pass the mic and give everyone on our panel just a chance to introduce themselves, right? Hussein? Yes.
So Hussein in nutshell, from Beyond Limits, I'm CTO of Unstructured Data. We are mainly focused on bringing advanced and scalable AI at scale for enterprise solutions and national oil companies, in energy and governments. We are serving many clients across the globe between Americas, APAC region, and recently in the Middle East.
I'm Mohammed El Hosseini. I'm a faculty at KAUST. I focus on computer vision. And I have been running a group for about 3 years. Before that, working in this space. Before that, I spent like about 5 years working in industry in companies like Adobe, Facebook, and Baidu.
Alex Alper, president of In Silico Medicine. In Silico is focused on discovering drugs, so medicines using AI, powered generative AI, and I'm responsible for our platform development in terms of target discovery, small molecule generation, and clinical trial analytics.
I am Sankalp Arora, co-founder and CEO of Gather AI. And we do what our name says, which is gather physical data using AI and bring the power of searchable databases to the physical world. Currently, we are focused on inventory monitoring and asset tracking in warehouses using a fleet of autonomous drones.
All right, thank you, our panelists. So sustainability in AI could have many different meanings. With the sizes of models growing as they are today, there are concerns with the energy consumption of training new models, but AI itself could also be used to further sustainability initiatives in society. And it is also very important for us to see a future where AI and society can co-evolve and co-develop in a healthy way. So I want to start out the panel with just a broad question for all of our panelists on what does sustainability in AI mean to you, and what are some of the biggest challenges that you see currently in the world facing AI in terms of sustainability? Why don't we go backwards this time?
Oh, okay. So this story is actually, the question is quite personal to me. So during my PhD, I was fortunate enough to work on world's first fully autonomous full-scale helicopter. And there's this helicopter, I'm standing in FBI training grounds in Quantico. The helicopter comes in to land, blows a bunch of snow, avoids a hay bale we specifically kept for it to avoid, and lands itself. And so it's a childhood dream come true to work on such a project. for me. But that helicopter had just covered 10 kilometers of path length and built a beautiful 3D map of the environment it had covered. It just clicked that drones, specifically powered by autonomy, can be such effective data gatherers that most of my work since has been how to make drones curious about the environments around them. And I think specifically the challenge we have in physical environments today is how do we gather data of our impact of human activities on the environment, and how is biodiversity in the environment, how is that going? So for me, the application of AI, specifically agile data gathering robots, is to capture the data and of the impact we are having on the environment. And then once that data is digitized, our folks in the ML community can take it over and do modeling on how to optimize our decisions on it.
Yeah, in my view, we can kind of split the sustainability part into two segments. The thing that happens on the AI side and then silico side, where you train the models, you do inference, right, and you want to optimize for efficiency in using computational resources, being using spot instances if you're sitting on cloud, or just making sure your models are run smoothly and efficiently in minimal number of iterations, so kind of computational excellency. And the second fold is application layer. So what can we do with AI to and leverage it to provide for sustainability? And in our experience, so we're developing molecules for pharmaceutical industry and treating patients. We want to make sure that the impact of even of those molecules is minimal on the environment, right? We want to make sure that the molecules are made with a minimal number of synthesis steps, require minimal number of starting chemical materials, and we would consume fewer resources to make them. We even work with one of the agrochemistry companies called Syngenta. It's one of the largest agrochemistry companies in the world, to generate new herbicides, what would be less harmful to the environment, so they wouldn't be killing bees or insects. They would be targeted and more selective towards the weeds. So I think there are plenty of opportunities for sustainability in the kind of application layer of AI, and this is a vastly kind of untapped space.
Right. So the way I think about sustainable AI is more related to, let's say, whether we are using AI to if you want to judge, for example, what is the energy we want to use per unit impact, or per unit, whether the service or the product you are providing, accelerating it with AI per unit impact can make a difference, so that compared to the way we otherwise do it makes sense, or is more effective, whatever that means. For example, if we use AI to enable self-driving cars, right? Self-driving cars, if it may that be enabled at some point, maybe this algorithm would be optimized to minimize energy and be much more efficient in driving more miles with less energy, or something like that. That's one example. Another example may also relate to maintaining biodiversity, right? So we want increasingly we care about monitoring the resources that we have in our planet, animals, materials, etc. And we need to have access to statistics, right? I want to recognize how many of those do we have, which materials you want to discover at some point, recognizing animals do exist, counting them, more like reporting those that could be of interest or could be in danger or something like that. So the more this access to this information AI may provide, may it achieve that quality, right? And may that provide some insights to make some impact. I think this is also can be a way to decide whether AI is providing more sustainable solution versus not. Yeah, so I think whatever services that we are providing, comparing to using AI versus not, and see how much energy do we save. Drug discovery, right? We have been struggling a lot with COVID for quite a bit, right? For more than 1.5 years, and this costs all of us a lot, right? And if we, for example, have some solutions that enable us to get to that solution or that drug or that vaccine much faster, that could have saved a lot for us. So I think it is tricky to decide whether AI can lead to more or less. It depends on the field, depends on the domain. Maybe it's already making an impact right now for some domains. Maybe it has a potential impact for some other, but not there yet. Yeah.
Hussein?
So for us, we always like to look to the make a root conflict analysis, like to see what's the root cause of the problem, and sustainability is not an exception. So, but practically, we solve it like looking to these root of issues in two different ways. One is maybe the example we presented this morning about using optimization. So optimizing in cost, that's a good thing, but also all of these technologies can optimize for environmental friendly things. And this midstream example was one of them, but also, for example, in power plant optimization. If you want to optimize on generating more clean tech, in any power plant which has negative mix between fossil fuel and also renewables, you can adjust based on certain constraints. And this is the same technology we use there, we also use there in such a platform. How we can optimize in a forecasted way. For example, if we are generating energy from solar panel or winds, having a machine learning models to predict nowcast and forecast for the coming 3 days, 7 days, we can optimize based on the demand required by the market, how much we want to push to the network, the grid. It's a mixed integer problem, as Mustafa mentioned before. It needs high performance computing. So also in the computing part, which is cost, it also produces a lot of energy consumption. We try to optimize when it comes to the optimal frameworks that can run inference in a fast time and also less energy. So optimizations in many ways. This is something you can play in the ingredients for producing new products in many ways, in refineries, in upstream. We also look, again, back to the root conflict analysis for the carbon capture, which is also a hot topic. Many AI companies try to solve that problem in material discovery and others, but also we look at it, why not to capture the carbon emission at source? So that's even more, because this is we think is more important than just trying to discover a material that can capture carbon from air. So this kind of philosophy we try to adopt AI. And the other thing is autonomy, which is because of our heritage from Caltech and the autonomous system, the autonomy system run for AI space research. Autonomy is used a lot in smart cities. And another focus we do at Beyond Limits is what we call smart mobility. For example, we have solutions we do today in UAE, how to automate people mobility and car mobility across borders. And for that, we make what we call express lane or unmanned transport, like moving from a country to another without the hassle of like even getting out of your car. So everything is autonomous. The kiosk to make the immigration process is completely autonomous as unmanned. So that increases the speed of mobility. And because, again, the root conflict of using more carbon and emissions is people spend more time in queuing. And when the cars are queuing, generate more emissions. So if you can do things faster, that's also another angle that we are looking at smart mobility, smart cities, trying to optimize on renewable energies and capture carbon emissions at source.
Great. Well, thank you to all our panel members for the insightful answers and what everyone is doing to promote more efficient and sustainable AI practices. So I think one of the most recently and the most public demonstrations of AI that's hitting everyone in the public has, of course, been ChatGPT. And as many of us know, the underlying technologies for ChatGPT is based on increasing scope to and increasing scale to massive amounts in terms of their model parameters, the resources it takes to train these models, and the data that's required to power them, right? So I think that anyone can kind of see that this trend cannot be sustainable in the long term. And I'm wondering from our panelists whether increasing the scale and increasing data, compute, and model size is the only way to see more innovation in AI in the future, and what are some alternative directions that we may see AI innovation taking place in the future that you may expect. Hussein, you want to go first?
So I totally agree. This is very revolutionary, especially when this release of ChatGPT last November, and I think this will become more and more scary, I would say, and more demanding in terms of more computing power, more data, and more aggressive, I would say. But looking to this, and there is a lot of debates if does that has a common sense? Is this close to artificial general intelligence or not yet? So I think that's important. It's a good direction to optimize there, but also we can look from at least from the way we think about it at Beyond Limits, back to, again, Caltech and NASA GPL is human-like reasoning is also important. Having a layer of semantics, imposing expert knowledge and common sense, using these reasoners and knowledge bases is important. It's lower the need of data. Because in a lot of applications, there is gaps in data, there is inconsistent data, and sometimes there's the faulty data. So having this combination between machine intelligence and human intelligence would have leads to more severity. And try to optimize how we, as a human, thinks. It's not necessarily numeric AI, which is most of our models, including ChatGPT is, but also symbolic AI, which is, so having a combination between this and a hybrid approach as a cognitive AI is a step towards AGI. I think with these two ways of thinking, maybe there's other third and fourth, but there's no enough maybe push on that direction. We try to do that as well. We believe maybe combination between both two worlds would be more efficient and also more environmental, because these large language models consumes a lot of energy and cost as well.
Thank you, Hussein.
I think this question has many aspects, right? One is how do we build the algorithms themselves to be more efficient, and this relates to. I believe that using domain knowledge is definitely going to be helpful. Like I at least am aware of some people who have been working on building generative models to synthesize rocks, 3D rocks. And using standard models didn't, like just standard training per today's standard didn't work. But when you add some loss functions that are informed by physics experts, like want to predict the porosity inside these rocks, I would never think of this as a machine learning specialist, but this idea actually emerged from something that made sense to that expert. So using the knowledge and indeed helped the development of these learning algorithms to be much more efficient. So no doubt about that. There is some other aspects, which is, for example, reusing these models. So sometimes these models are really, really huge. It might take some, like a lot of compute to train to start with, but it's notoriously inefficient to retrain it again and again on the same data, and it actually doesn't make sense. People don't learn that way. So we want models that just take the new updates, like let's say GPT is trained up until like 2021. I don't want it to retrain it on all the data. It already has some knowledge. We need to edit some information to make it up to date, but we don't want to spend this same energy again. So this is another way to spend to reduce cost and make it more sustainable. Yeah, I think these are. For developing some other applications require understanding of both language and vision. So I think using pre-trained models from both the vision side and the language side, and just build small gating functions that interface between these two will also reduce carbon footprint rather than requiring a lot of data and carbon footprint to retrain them jointly. This has emerged in some of the recent research over the past few years in, for example, Flamingo, Visual GPT, and others. Blip2, this is also another paper that interfaces between pre-trained language model like OPT by Facebook and like pre-trained vision model to enable it to do tasks like visual question answering, asking questions about an image. Let's say, does this image have let's say have a red car or something like that, which might be some questions that blind people might want to use to see if there's something they are looking for in a room or something like that. Yeah.
And just a quick announcement for everyone. Our live stream audience would love it if the speakers could hold the microphone a little closer to their mouths because the microphone is apparently not picking it up. So hope that helps everyone.
Perfect. I will try to do that. It's not too loud. So I actually, on Tuesday, Professor Eric Sheen said one thing that I completely sign off on, is that ChatGPT is not a new technology, right? So it's been around. So Google published and patented it since 2017. It's just the first time that technology, generative AI, has been paired so expertly with human intelligence, human reinforcement, learning, active learning. So it reached that kind of conversational level that had not been seen before. So I think that, and before ChatGPT, there have been multiple attempts on doing that. So NVIDIA had like 500 billion parameter model, but it didn't reach the same level of excellency in the conversational aspect. So I think going forward, we will see more specialized models that would leverage the existing and pre-trained architectures towards specific applications. And I think that paired with lower energy costs, so we see that energy cost with the advent of renewables is getting lower, ultimately that would hopefully bring a more sustainable future for the entire sector. It was mentioned yesterday that the bar and kind of the entry bar is very high right now, so only a few companies can train the same type of models as OpenAI, and I think that bar will slowly and gradually be reduced, and we'll see more open source frameworks that would leverage existing models and pair them up with more kind of specialized applications.
So just thinking about your original question, Arik, is it inevitable that number of parameters will keep increasing, hence the size of the models, and maybe their unsustainability? So I think I can speak for all of the researchers that are working in this field that general AI is our dream, right? We want to make our digital machines as intelligent as we are. And we know we take up a lot of neurons to be generally intelligent. So it's almost inevitable that number of parameters in models will keep increasing in the hunt for that general AI. I think the question is, can it be optimized and offset with respect to, can those models drive efficiencies themselves? For example, I think it was 2017 when DeepMind published 40% reduction in data center energy consumption due to just optimizing the cooling of a Google data center. So I think it will be an equation of how quickly we scale up our parameters across the industry versus how quickly can we optimize our energy consumption as energy becomes hopefully more renewable.
Right. Thank you for the insightful answers. So for the remainder of the questions in this session, I want to focus on some aspects of sustainability outside of energy and outside of environment. So we had a lot of insightful comments and thoughts from our panel on how AI can affect environmental change and how AI itself can be done efficiently in terms of energy. But we can also think of sustainability from many different angles in society at large. For example, with the advancement of AI, there are many questions around how far will automation go and how will people in society adapt to the automation and AI that is coming? How will content creators and content generation interplay with each other in the future? And how will the spread of misinformation affect our society going forwards, right? So I think the first question I want to ask is around this question of job loss, right? With the advancement of AI that's been happening recently and with the capabilities that the public now sees what ChatGPT is able to do, what these different image models is able to do, and with the pace of innovation, my question is the current progress of AI progressing too quickly, and how should we balance the advancement of AI with sustainability in practice and in society? Sankalp, would you like to start?
Yeah, I was just thinking how underqualified I am to answer this question. But I think generally experts or so-called experts are wrong in long-term horizon predicting how the world will pan out. But in short-term horizon, in my own little world of optimizing supply chain, specifically through Gather AI, what I've seen is the industry is struggling with massive labor shortages, specifically supply chain industry. And automation there has become necessary to just support e-commerce demand. And in our case, wherever we go and automate facilities with our drones, it's more of a joy on the face of workers that are on the ground because their jobs become easier. They don't have to climb on forklifts and do things that are risky for just taking images of inventory. And it has almost become necessary in this sector. I don't know how it broadens up to the larger society, but in the sector that we are operating, automation has almost become necessary because of extensive labor shortage.
Yeah, for our industry, for the industry of drug discovery, I don't think there is any kind of excessive development of AI, what you kind of hinted towards your last question. I don't think we reached a level of AI that is dangerous. Drug discovery, we need more powerful AI solutions to bring more medicines to patients. We have over 10,000 indications without any treatment option, and people need more medicines. So I think in the area of drug discovery, and we have been in generative AI since 2015, working on different applications of generative AI in drug discovery. We think that the current advances, they're huge for the benefit of patients ultimately, and we need to advance it as much as possible. Whereas in other areas, as you said, like an area of like news, search, you would have to be more diligent with generative AI, with ChatGPT. You need to have better kind of due diligence process and curation, proper referencing system to ensure that all pieces of information are well curated. But in drug discovery, I think that technology needs, we need more solutions, and the more we have, the more medicines we ultimately bring to patients.
So I think AI this century is more like energy. Sorry, okay. So I think the AI for the 21st century is like the revolution of energy 1 century back. So for example, think about when photography was invented. I think most artists at that time, before photography was invented, most of their job is to depict the reality and things like that. And artists at that time thought, hey, we may no longer have jobs, and they were so worried about that. But actually, that didn't happen. That actually shifted the art movement. So a new art style has emerged, like Cubism. And others. So this shifted our way of thinking or developing this art literature in a different way. I think before cars were invented, how big was the car industry? So it's kind of as new technologies emerge, it will shift the skill sets that we care about. It will create new jobs and things like that. So I believe that it's natural progression of the development of our society, and equivalent to how energy was a big thing a century back, and it has shifted the way we think about industry, the way we shape or educate our next generation. I think AI is probably doing something similar right now. And we as a site, I think we will have increasing awareness about when it makes sense to use this technology, when is it mature enough to use it and it's more effective than other ways versus not using it. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe to answer that, just an example. Again, back to the technology we presented this morning. So this is also used in battery design. So if you want to optimize on battery, that's also for more sustainable, less dangerous, for example, in EVs, batteries design, moving from like liquid to solid. Having this like autonomy for lab engineers, they see it as a risk because, okay, I'm also having like codifying my knowledge. These constraints that I'm setting for optimizing this is my daily job. So, but after adopting these solutions, for example, in lubricant formulation, actually it helps them. They found it, they first become like resistant to this technology because they thought that this would replace them, because the main work, their experience is now automated. But now they see it as more efficient, as you said, it's like evolution. And they need to work side by side with it and use it as a way to enhance the performance, the outcome, being better, faster, and then they can focus on more things. So I think that's important. Our concept on that is have not closed loop, like human in the loop approach. So a human in the loop approach for AI and autonomy is very important so that it allows even more superior intelligence than just machine or human. And I think it's a good way to balance, and these technologies are coming anyway. So it's better to adapt and use and see better ways to it. Yes, it will reduce some jobs as any evolutions come before, but it will also reduces and generates new jobs, more intelligent, that will allow us focus more in more like a planning and strategic things and do things better.
Great. How much time do we have? Enough time for one more question? All right. So I think definitely what's becoming clear is that there's still a lot of work that needs to be done when it comes to the interplay between society and AI. So, and I think a lot of these problems are going to have to be solved throughout many different institutions coming together to find the correct solution, right? So this will be between all the different verticals in industry, between public sectors, government, lawmakers, and policymakers, as well as research institutions such as MBZ UAI, right? So I think for the final question, I want to ask, what role do these interdisciplinary and cross-sector collaborations play in advancing the good of AI for society and in the sustainable development of AI as they co-evolve with society in the future? Hussein, do you want to start?
Sure. I think open innovation is very important. It's there is no single organization can do it all. Data accessibility is important as well in that domain, which is it's always a concern by governments and companies and organizations because this is their assets. But there is always a way to have a portion of this data open and for the better good for all. It's only by collaboration between governmental, private sector, and entities to actually advance the technology and discover more optimal and more sustainable. If you do it separately in islands, each one will optimize for their goals, but what we see is they forgot the sustainability goal to focus on. Since sustainability affects all, it makes sense to have it as a collaborative way between academia, industry, governments, research, financial institutes. It's not even just a country level, it's a regional and global objectives to think about. I think it's only feasible by start thinking of open access and open innovation, share your challenges to the community, and community all collaborate to solve and innovate the solution.
So I would say I do have a very similar viewpoint. There is the research part is one thing, but translating that to society, to make a real society impact is very challenging. It requires a lot of collaboration. Because if we, let's say, develop like a solution for drug, it might be biased if it's developed in certain society, let's say the US or Emirates or Saudi Arabia. So it may work well in this distribution, but it may not work well in other places. So same thing applies to almost any technology, right? Self-driving cars, if it's developed in one place, it may not work well in other places. And this limits our opportunities to make indeed a global impact. But there are currently there are solutions. The scientific community came up with solutions because there are issues that relate to privacy and things like that. And this is where secure ML encrypted ML systems has shown an federated learning is also one way to go around this. So we can use medical data if it's encrypted in some format. And this may enable us to train on data everywhere. And this has its own like political challenges and stuff like that. So I think this will create a lot more opportunities. One of the applications that I hope to, for example, to see in the future is, let's say everyone have his own home, and maybe you want to have one day that robot that really helps you do stuff and bring you a cup of coffee or whatever. And this technology, I think, will be far from mature unless we have access to at least some encrypted information of a lot of homes. And I have seen a recent paper in my community about federated learning on this particular task, localizing objects in 3D environment, which could be your house, could be this room. And I think the research community is going into realizing these real issues. And I think more collaboration with governments, with companies, and more interactions between industry, academia, and governments will maximize our chances.
Yeah, in our case, we're in drug discovery business, right? And we permanently collaborating with hundreds of different institutions, academia, industry, in healthcare. But speaking of interdisciplinary partnerships, so I mentioned Syngenta, this is agrochemistry. We also have a partnership with Aramco on designing new fuels that would be even more efficient. Saudi already has the least carbon barrel of oil across the leading producers, but they want to strive and innovate further. And UAE is not far behind, very close to them, kind of leading the space. I think that those interdisciplinary approaches where the platform can be applied elsewhere and applied efficiently would be key to transforming industries. And one key underlying process that we're very passionate about is longevity and aging process, because aging is not intrinsic to humans only, it is intrinsic to material, to anything, any matter. So we think that by studying and improving longevity of humans, living organisms, and materials, we would be ultimately increasing the sustainability component too.
So something that comes to mind in terms of applications of AI, and with respect to government specifically being interdisciplinary, because government is making decisions at the policy level. And it is quite exciting to see, specifically as an AI researcher, that at least at the corporate level, data has become all pervasive in terms of decision making and analytics. And even in our little scenario of decision making in warehouses for supply chain, the reason why our solution works is we provide that visibility into what is sitting in a warehouse, what is sitting in an inventory setting, just so that decision makers can make decisions on how the warehouse or the supply chain network should be run. At the same level, I think for AI adoption to be useful for people, governments need to adopt the same kind of decision making, which is data driven, in order for AI to make a positive impact. And this is a personal fear, of course, it may be unfounded, is specifically when internet came out, it was for the democratization of information. And we discovered that actually it is for the democratization of misinformation. And how information got centralized with organizations like Google and Facebook. And then they play an important role, all of us consume information. I think as the barrier to entry to AI, something like OpenAI and ChatGPT keeps increasing, it will be important for governments of the world to make sure that they are up to date on how to keep this AI democratized and decentralized instead of making them centralized. But that's just a personal fear of mine.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. I think one of the takeaways from this session is that these questions around sustainability and co-evolution of society and AI are big questions and that need to be solved. And these are questions that experts such as the ones on our panel have been thinking about every day. And we also hope that this is something that everyone realizes that there is also a role for everyone to play in the development of sustainable AI as well, right? So do we want to end with a couple of questions from the audience, if there are any?
Thank you so much. So in most of the answers of how AI solutions can be made sustainable, one of the common element was that reusability of AI models because of already how much energy that has been used up to build these large models. So how do you see continued learning as an aspect in this? Because I understand that it has not progressed as much, but isn't it one direction that we must be looking into, that if we include continued learning in almost all solutions that we look into, we could come up with, instead of looking into reusability, we have already halfway into the solution. So what do you, and anybody could.
Whoever wants to answer. Maybe Mohammed, I think you mentioned the reusability.
Oh, yeah, sure. I believe so. Okay. I believe continual learning is essential to do this, right? It's actually quite natural. Like we learn that way, right? So we start with nothing, right? We don't know anything about the world, and we continually learn about new animals, new objects around us, and our vocabulary increases over time. And maybe the last time we have seen certain animal could be long ago, but we still can recognize it, right? We don't have an example to update the ingredients in our brain to remember how this animal looked like, right? But we can still remember that. So I think it is how we learn. I also believe that the current parameter size is maybe can be reduced, because it's getting to the point that it's even it's larger than the number of neurons in our brain, right? The scales these days that has been trained in these days, right? So I think continual learning is definitely, so you don't want, continual learning is about what? Is about not retraining on every single image, right? Imagine that everything you have learned in the past, you have to take snapshots of pictures and then revisit them every day while learning about a new type of flower or a new type of bird or something like that. This is not how we learn, right? So if you are seeking to a learning that is as efficient as we do, we're still far from that. Our best machines are still trained in this epoch setting. You go over many, maybe hundreds of those, and if you have internet scale data, that can be too much, and that's why we have a very large carbon footprint, which we don't want to spend to retrain. It's notorious, of course, to retrain. Continual learning is about, hey, I trained ChatGPT up until 2021, and then, hey, 2 years has passed, and I want to retrain it, but I want to retrain for the information between 2021 and 2023. Now we have a model that is hopefully integrating these two like periods, but later, what happens in 2025, right? So we have another task, which is integrating those two to a former task, which is before 2021, from 2021 on to 2023, and 2023 to 2025, right? So we want to integrate the knowledge we have gained in the following 2 years with the former ones while mitigating catastrophic forgetting. Because as we proceed over time, the access to knowledge that is trained in the 2021 version will contribute to less gradient updates, right? Which means may lead to forgetting and actually carefully editing the model or carefully updating the model so it does not forget this knowledge can be tricky. And that's why I feel like a subfield like continual learning has a lot of open questions, and it may be very effective. It definitely will contribute to a lot of impact to training language models and maybe vision language models when they get further developed in a way that is still far from the scale that where language models are these days.
I think we can also look at it from reusability things. Like, in addition to continue using existing things, if we can reuse it elsewhere, it's important. And that maybe comes to the interdisciplinary aspect of things and collaboration. I want to give a quick example how also things that has been developed in terms of an algorithm level. An example how we transfer and reuse things built for a certain field to another field. A quick example that we did is there is an algorithm developed for find the first black hole imaging by NASA at Caltech. It was a problem where to place the telescopes in an efficient way, the minimum number of them because they're very costly, and how to distribute them. That's consumed a lot of time and effort in research. And when we looked at a problem in sustainability about sensor placement for leakage detection, so to detect leakage in water, which is important for sustainability, which is a governmental level solutions. And instead of like re-innovate or reinvent this from a research point of view and algorithmically, we looked again, what's other disciplinary had the same abstracted problem. So we take that approach, again, that's simulation-based optimization, and apply it to that to optimize the lowest number of sensors were to place in the distribution network to capture. So this is just an example where we can also reuse existing efforts and similar to the large language models, because it takes time and efforts and cost. Take these and apply it elsewhere, again, solving sustainability issues, because there is a lot of innovations in other disciplinaries, and let's always try to see where we can reuse that instead of reinventing the wheels.
Okay, well, that brings us to the end of the session. Let's thank our moderator and panelists. Great. And with that, we are back to our regularly scheduled program. So I would like to invite Alex Elliper, President of In Silico Medicine, and he's just getting his equipment ready. Okay. And so Alex, he will be speaking on generative AI and sixth generation drug discovery robotics for chemistry, biology, and medicine. So we'll give him a minute to get set up, and then we will start.
Yeah.
And the mic is, you just have to put this in your pocket. Yeah, I think so. All set?
Perfect. All right. Hi, everybody. Good morning. I understand that my presentation is the only thing that separates us from lunch, so I will try to be very brief. So at InSilico, we do drug discovery, and today I'm going to focus on only one component, the platform component that we developed. I wouldn't cover the pipeline or partnerships. I would walk you through some of the case studies and platform applications that we have been working on and continue to work on. So this is the kind of central dogma of traditional drug R&D. So you have to, in order to develop a drug, you have to spend around $2 billion US dollars, and it takes over 10 years to develop a drug. And every stage of development has been historically very challenging. So you have, in terms of costs, the target discovery stage where you identify the reason behind the disease and identify a target. It usually happens in academia. It can take years, and failure rate is 99%. Failure rate increases when you go into human clinical trials, so you are likely to fail in phase 2 clinical trials when evaluating efficacy. So it is a very challenging endeavor. And I'm going to walk you through some of the stages that we have been able to tackle in our journey from target discovery to completed phase 1 clinical trials. Usually, clinical stages of drug R&D are very regulated. So phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. So you cannot really trim too much in terms of a timeline it takes to develop a drug, run clinical trials, but you can significantly speed up the preclinical or discovery stages. We know that drug R&D has been shifting in terms of its paradigm from CRO-based or knowledge-based R&D into the AI realm. So nowadays, probably any pharmaceutical company, big pharma company, utilizes AI in one form or another, and this trend continues to grow, and we see more and more kind of adoption in pharma industry. But that said, the R&D expenditures, they're growing. So the investment it takes to develop new molecules, it elevates and have been following the trend for the last 10 years. So what do we do about it? We have been working on a few areas where AI can help with drug discovery. So on this slide, you see some of the stages of discovery stages of the pharma process. So you have disease hypothesis, you identify a target, you validate the target, you develop small molecule, and you then optimize it and go into human clinical trials. So We have been in this space since 2015 when we first tried to approach chemistry tasks, so generate novel molecules with GANs. So 2014, Ian Goodfellow published the seminal paper on GANs. In 2016, we applied the same kind of algorithm, generative adversarial autoencoders, to generate fingerprints, so chemical fingerprints, and then validated them, kind of matching to known chemical space of oncology drugs. Following that, we have published in the area of generative AI, consistently introduced new models, new architectures, worked with different representations of molecules, with smiles, with strings, with graphs, with electron density maps, and many others. And in generative biology, we used AI to generate novel transcriptomic, multi-omics data with specific characteristics. In some of the seminal papers, we're also collaborating with one of the KOLs in the industry, Alana Spurugudzik. So to tackle this problem, the complexity of the problem, we thought to go in end-to-end. So we wanted to control the cycle completely and not only do one component, but do all three components. So identify targets. We have Pandomics platform for that. Then design molecules for those targets. We have Chemistry 42. And improve the likelihood of success in clinical trials. This is a clinical platform. All three platforms have been productized because we wanted to allow others, pharma companies, biotech industry, and academia to have access to those platforms. So all platforms are available as SaaS solutions, so anybody can access them via browser and either identify a target, leverage multi-omics data, generate molecules, or predict the likelihood of clinical trial success. We are basing our AI platform on a large database of biomedical knowledge. We have over 10 million human samples covering different modalities of omics data from proteomics, transcriptomics, genomics, essentially everything that has been generated in public domain. And in terms of diseases, we have over 10,000 different disease indications in our repository. We also have chemistry, and probably the largest text database where we monitor publications, patents, but also government grants, which oftentimes serve as a good signal. So I'm going to start with Pandomics platform. I'm going to go platform by platform and describe the utility of each one of them. So Pandomics is a tool to address some of the challenges in the early stage drug discovery. Target choice is the ultimate decision pharma company makes when initiating the program. So, basically, the decision that happens very early on in discovery can play a critical role in the phase 2 clinical trials where you evaluate efficacy of a drug. And the decision ought to be a correct one. In fact, many clinical trials fail. Most of the clinical trials fail because of the wrong decision on the target. There are many targets available, many relevant targets still remain undiscovered. So we developed a platform called Pandomics to essentially be utilized as a Google for target discovery. So anybody can look up different diseases. So this is NASH, non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, and browse available data sets, research dynamics. You can go into target ID section and navigate different hypotheses on proteins that might be implicated in this disease. You can explore each individual protein and figure out whether it has enough evidence behind to support a discovery project. And following that, you can also select data sets and run your own analysis with your own proprietary data if you want. So that's a useful tool for biologists in pharma industry and academia as well. So, and it is extremely user-friendly. High school students can use it, and they do. So we have cases where high school students actually published papers and presented at conferences with the pandomics output. In terms of the software kind of workflow, we leverage different types of scores. We have over 60 different philosophies of scoring targets, AI-based, statistics-based, coming from omics data, so genomics, proteomics, text data. We are leveraging publications, patents, and government grants, but also financial data as well. And we apply many different filters on top of those scorings. So how novel is the target? Is it druggable? Is it safe intrinsically? And at the end, we end up with a list of target candidates for best-in-class or first-in-class therapeutics. So in terms of our validation method, so it's essential to validate all those 60 philosophies for target ID. Thankfully, our database has been thoroughly curated and time-stamped, so we can essentially use time machine approach to use sliding kind of training windows and train up to a certain period of time and validate on the data time-stamped at a later date. We have been utilizing recent advances in NLP and using transformer-based models to enable design of knowledge graphs for specific disease or target pairs. So you can explore any connection between different diseases and genes, processes, and drugs. And scientists typically like it because it provides causality and understanding of the underlying mechanism. One of the case studies we published last year is focused on one of the devastating rare disorders called ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, which is extremely devastating and deadly. So we used pandomics platform and paired it up with ALS samples, omics samples, transcriptomics data from patients with ALS, and we purposed pandomics to identify new targets and repurposing candidates for this disease. And this is done in partnership with Harvard, with Johns Hopkins, Mayo Clinic, and Tsinghua University. So we did the analysis using pandomics platform. So we identified new targets, prioritized drug repurposing candidates, and validated them. So we validated the targets in a Drosophila model because there are no human specific translatable models that would be as efficient in selecting target candidates because you can do efficient knockout experiments. So we verified 8 unreported genes prioritized by pandomics platform and validated this in the Drosophila C9 model. So basically, in this model, this is a neurodegenerative model where you see kind of the degeneration of an eye of the Drosophila fly. So if you knock down any of those 8 targets, it completely rescues the degeneration of an eye of this fly. So it's pretty remarkable that all 8 targets that we have nominated, and we knock down those targets, that resulted in, ultimately rescue of the pathologic phenotype. Another case study was done with Hopkins, where we used pandomics to identify targets for oncology application. We selected 2 targets based on the pandomics output and designed dual targeting biologics, so a dual targeting antibody to tackle both of those targets. And we've seen that the resulting dual targeted antibody have been substantially more efficacious in shrinking the tumor size in animal models. We have published plenty of publications, but let me switch now to the Chemistry 42 platform. So once you identify a target and once you nominate it, you go into chemistry 42 to design a molecule, a small molecule structure that would ultimately be the drug. So challenges in chemistry-specific generative AI, there are plentiful of challenges. You have to do multi-parametric optimization, so you have to account for many different properties for different drugs. So whether it's potency, safety, accessibility, selectivity, and many, many others. You have to be diverse in your generation. You have to generate many different ideas of molecules, different chemotypes, and you have to accurately predict properties. We have been developing this platform since 2015, from initial concepts of applying GANs and generative adversarial autoencoders to pairing them up with additional reward function modules, and the number of both generative models and reward modules, it grew over time. And currently we have over 40 different generative models and reward functions. In terms of the workflow is structured in a way where you first configure the platform, so you specify the data set, you specify your target that you identified, let's say using pandaomics. You provide the crystal structure of the target, either real crystal structure, or you can use AlphaFold generated crystal structure. You submit into the configuration for generation, and you have this kind of reinforcement learning cycle where you have 40 different generative algorithms working in unison with reward function to iterate million of times over a period of 48 to 72 hours, that's the standard runtime, to generate small molecules that would look like this and have potential to be made and commercialized into medicines, into kind of pills or injectables. In terms of generative pipeline, we utilize many different models and molecular representations. As I mentioned, we use smile strings, we use graphs, three-dimensional representations, proprietary representations like electron density maps, and we have different strategies for exploring the chemical space. We explore and exploit, and different algorithms underlying those representations, so genetic algorithms, GANs, variational autoencoders, language models, and many others. Yeah, in terms of reward pipeline, we have dozens of scoring modules that ensure that the generated generative models get the feedback on the molecules they generate, and they arrive at the right chemotype that would be tractable and viable. Yeah, currently we have 42 generative algorithms, 12 reward functions, and we have validated the platform on over 30 internal programs and published around 100 papers on the program. One of the highlights that has been published just 3 weeks ago is our paper with Mike Levitt, Nobel laureate in chemistry, and Alana Spurugudzik, where we utilized both pandaomics and chemistry 42 to go after novel target. So we use pandaomics to identify a novel target, without a crystal structure. This target is called CDK20, and we identified it for hepatocellular carcinoma, the liver cancer. We identified this target using pandaomics. We used AlphaFold generated structure of this target, and we then submitted this crystal structure, AlphaFold generated crystal structure, into the chemistry 42. So it took us 2 weeks to generate a molecule, synthesize, validate. We got hits, and within next 30 days, we got leads with low nanomolar potency range, and we also validated those molecules in vitro for anti-proliferation activity in hepatocellular cancer. So this is kind of a case study which for the first time demonstrates also the power of AlphaFold paired with generative AI to discover novel drugs. So to our knowledge, this is the first paper with experimental validation of AlphaFold generated structures. And finally, the third platform is in clinical, and clinical trials are extremely lengthy and risky process and costly process. So only 14% of drugs make it to market. 40% of drugs that enter clinical trials. So what do we do about it? So we've developed a platform called Clinico. Again, it's a SaaS platform, which leverages clinical data, preclinical data, to arrive at scores, probability of success of phase 2 clinical trials. So for each clinical trial, you have a score, you have a target choice score, how well the target fits the disease of interest, and trial design score, how likely the trial is succeed given the presented trial design. And we utilize those scores to arrive at the final probability of success. We use different layers of data for all the scores we utilize. In terms of trial design, we use the blinding mechanism, the accrual numbers, the site composition, clinical site composition, number of arms. For target choice score, we use clinical and preclinical data, protein-protein interaction networks, and multiple omics data repositories. We also use patient eligibility criteria, admitox parameters to pack those into scoring ensemble, and finally arrive at probability of success and feature impacts on probability of success. We also use quasi-prospective validation here, because ultimately, in order to validate this tool, you have to wait for years till the clinical trials you predicted read out. So clinical trials are lengthy. So we use quasi-prospective validation, where similarly to pandomics, we have a sliding time window based on the timestamp data. We have training data set up to 2017, end of 2017, and we validate on everything that read out 2018 and onwards. So currently we have a quasi-prospective forecast precision of about 85 to 87%, depending on success or failure. And it varies depending on therapeutic area. So in gastroenterology, the model does not really well, but really good in systemic rheumatic disease predictions and different diseases linked to immunological axis. Well, and in terms of interpretability, the models can be deep black box using SHAP plots and SHAP values. So in this example, we predicted a failure of one trial by Aptinix against fibromyalgia, where we see here the values of SHAP values of different features and how they impacted the final probability of success. You see that the target accruals of the number of patients enrolled in the trial positively impacted the probability of success, whereas other parameters in trial design were suboptimal and kind of pushed the likelihood of success down. And we also, just to highlight one of the pipeline case studies, we applied all three platforms in the leading program we have in our pipeline, the program for idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. And this program, essentially, we utilized pandomics to identify a target, chemistry 42 to generate a molecule, and in Clinico to predict the likelihood of success of clinical trials. We did multiple tests and experiments, and we arrived at phase 1 start in under 30 months, where in the industry it takes 6 or 6.5 years. So we saw the threefold speed up in preclinical and the speed of preclinical discovery. An example of this program. And finally, I'm going to conclude on one new and exciting aspect that we're working on. So we mentioned sustainability and how we can leverage robotics and automation in work processes. So we embarked on a mission to build entirely automated lab. So this is kind of a lab model, kind of floor plan. We built in Suzhou, and I will show you a video after that. So we are global. We have a site in Suzhou, and this is our site in Shanghai. But in Suzhou, we have, government gave us a building. So this is a building they gave us. We built a lab on the third floor. So this is a footage from 1 year ago, so there is nothing there. So Alex, our CEO, is kind of showing around. So this floor was designed specifically for fully automated robotics. And 1 year after that, we launched the lab. So last December, so this December, we launched the lab. This is how it looks right now. We have dimmed windows to the right. There is a lab space with robots. And we have over 400 meters of lab space, and I will show you how it works. Because essentially, Alex also gave some of his samples to be processed in the lab, so for personalized drug discovery and biomarker discovery. And yeah, essentially, no humans are allowed to enter the lab. It's completely automated. Robotics arms everywhere, and we have automated guided vehicles that pick up the samples from one stand, one machine, and go to the other. We have developed proprietary autonomous guided vehicles, AGVs, where you pick up the samples, you grind it, do quality control, you then prepare the solutions for next generation sequencing. So entire process is automated, and in the end, you kind of arrive at your sample-specific data sets with deep phenotyping, deep imaging, and processing. So this is a 6th generation labs. You can see kind of the evolution of drug discovery robotics. The first generation is a high throughput screening, which is done in many pharma companies. Then there was kind of a movement towards bringing more layers of data, multi-omics data, and different layers of automation. So in the 6th generation, we introduce not only humanless lab environment, but also the choices on drug selection, target selection are made by our platforms. So we're not interfering with the process as humans, as human experts in this kind of learning cycle. So this is a 6th generation robotics. We have different layers, AI layer and application layer, where we have platforms. And we utilize this platform for different purposes. For internal platforms, we use it for target ID and high throughput automatic target validation. We use it for drug discovery and translational medicine. We can identify biomarkers and synergistic combinations. And we also can validate algorithms with the lab. And it naturally pairs with our AI platforms. You can hook, essentially, Pandaomics controls the target selection process. Then you pass it on to Chemistry 42 to generate molecules and select molecules from the library. And the entire process is run by this robot. So in terms of the vision, we plan to expand the capabilities of the lab, number of utilities. So we want to enable even deeper phenotyping with the lab. And we want to miniaturize it. We want to cost it down, so make it cheaper, and perhaps deployable towards in the hospital setting. So individual hospitals can acquire the same capabilities as major drug discovery companies for personalized medicine to discover new therapeutics for individual patients. Yeah, with that, I'm gonna stop and would like to thank you and take your questions.
All right. So I will maybe start with the first question, which is, I think what we've just seen, of course, is very reflective of the pharmacology and drug design process in advanced countries, right, where you've beautifully illustrated the entire sequence of steps that requires that, for example, FDA approval would require for a drug. Now, one of the things that has happened recently in the UAE, right, is this idea that sustainability also includes having an impact on populations that are most affected by sustainability issues such as climate change, right? And to that end, there was a project called Malaria No More that had been signed on by some of the leadership of this country, right? Which got me thinking a little bit, right? On the one hand, you have what advanced countries do in the very costly, but with good reason, right? Drug design process. And on the other hand, you have maybe this perhaps disconnect with what's going on in the developing world. And clearly there's no easy solution to this problem because if there were, we wouldn't have this gap between the rich and the poor. But I'm curious though, with all that you said about AI, that's automating part of the process, and then your company's vision to go into robotics to further automate and bring this end to end, right? How do you see this playing out in the long run between, say, the divide between how healthcare is done in richer countries versus poorer countries?
Yeah, so that's a kind of perfect segue into the last part I covered. So discovery robotics is something that we want to make cost efficient, right? So even in countries like poorer countries, you can essentially have this lab relatively cheaply, and the entire lab can fuel the biotechnology ecosystem in this country. So that's the idea. We want to democratize drug discovery. There are not enough medicines out there to benefit all the patients. There are neglected diseases that do not deserve enough attention, like orphan diseases that are not commercially viable, so pharma companies are not interested in pursuing them. So if you democratize drug discovery, make it cheaper and faster, you would incentivize people to go into those kind of neglected therapeutic areas, bring medicines, develop medicines there, and benefit people. In this region, there are no discovered therapeutics discovered here, right? So kind of laboratories like this can enable regions to discover medicines on themselves, right? We don't have to rely on the wish and will of big pharma industry elsewhere, which resides in Basel and Boston, and wait for the therapeutic to be developed. They can take action and do it themselves, develop those drugs themselves, develop novel therapeutics themselves. We're only tackling 10% of human proteome currently with existing chemical probes, right? There are plenty room for exploration of different targets and mechanisms. So I think democratization of drug discovery is essential to kind of tackle thousands of unmet medical needs existing in the region. And we think that ultimately, by addressing those needs, you would also bring on the healthy, productive longevity, but will also benefit the region economically.
Great. So if I might summarize your line of thinking, it seems that the current wave of technology in the pharmaceutical industry is that AI is bringing down the cost of the non-wet or non-wet lab part of the effort. But what you're doing here with robotics is also bringing down that part of the cost that's associated with doing the actual physical in silico, literally, in the test tube experiment, right? And then I want to get a sense of, since you know the numbers, right? How much does it cost right now in all the parts of the process that you're automating? How much is AI saving right now, and how much will robotics save on top of that, right? Are we looking at, say, going from 100% cost to 10% or 100% to 5%? This is to help our audience get a sense of how much of an impact it's going to have for sustainable causes.
Yeah, I would say it's from 100 to 1%. So two orders of magnitude difference. For example, our antifibrotic program, it took us 18 months and $2.6 million to develop it from the nomination of disease to preclinical candidate, to human trials. Usually this process takes 4.5 to 5 years, so 3 times longer, and it costs $500 to $600 million. So I would say it's the cost component is, it's a 100-fold improvement. The time component, by reducing the number of iterations, is at least 3-fold.
Great, thank you. With that kind of promise, as everyone despairs about the soaring cost of drugs in the US and other places, right? People always ask on the street, right? Why are my meds so expensive? Why have they been getting more expensive over time? So it seems that you're doing good work, both for people who are facing higher medicine prices in the developed world, but also in the developing world where this is even more of an acute problem.
Yeah.
Great. So, any other questions from our audience? Okay.
Thank you, Alex, for a very nice presentation. I'm wondering, you talked about the 6th generation robotics, which your company is pursuing, and in the slide you showed the 7th generation, but you didn't talk about it. What would, if the 6th generation is democratizing, as you said, and allowing poor countries and poor regions to have access to these drugs and to develop their own, like UAE, what would the 7th generation do?
Yeah, I would say it would be improved version on the 6th generation, right? So 6th generation is, well, although it costs, well, a significant amount of money, right, to develop, but it's nowhere near the cost required to build similar kind of infrastructure like you have in Broad Institute, right? So that's something that's not feasible for smaller countries. 7th generation focuses on miniaturizing the lab, like in terms of size. So you want to kind of optimize the size component and cost component. So we want to make it at least 10 times cheaper in that range. And of course, we want to hook it up with additional external reward functions. So currently we kind of build it up for our infrastructure, but if somebody like a hospital is interested in specific biomarker, they know they want, right? So they can customize the reward function based on their own input. So clinicians can tailor the experiments to satisfy their own kind of needs. So that's the idea. So we want to miniaturize, cost down, and yeah, make it, fitting for any kind of hospital setting or university setting, right? So it's just a very unique way of kind of generating high throughput data, multiple layers of data. Right now, I think the data value increases exponentially if you layer up different modalities of data. You connect imaging with omics, with kind of longitudinal data, with some experiments kind of down the road. If you increase the number of layers of data for a single sample, that elevates the value of this data tremendously. So I think kind of increasing the value of generated data and democratizing is the direction of the 7th generation.
Right.
I'm just curious. You did mention at one point about where somebody could come and provide samples and you could personalize the entire process for them. So if you just look at the automation part, if personalized drug discovery is impactful, then this would have a great impact, because that wouldn't be possible in terms of cost to do it for each individual, right? So is it really effective? Like, is drug discovery and personalized drug discovery like very far, or are they actually effective? Like, is it such that this changes from one person to the other? Because human body is actually a very complicated system, I would say.
So it's a great question. We see the industry trend of making clinical trials that are more focused on populations, specific like narrow populations with very defined genetic profile. So pharma companies, they want to maximize the chance of success, and they want to have a very defined population. And that's important because this lab can allow you to make those granular decisions on specific population selection, right? So if your patient comes and provides the samples, you can immediately identify which bucket, kind of treatment bucket, the patient can fit in terms of genetic background, in terms of behavioral, phenotyping data, which we generate. And I think that's the trend. So the industry tries to kind of make it as efficient as possible, select populations based on those kind of phenotyping and genetic evidence, mutational profile, SNPs profile for individual humans. So I don't think we're there yet. So hospitals run routine genetic tests to identify risk groups, to kind of specify the regimens for visits, right? So if you are in a risk group, you'll have certain kind of frequency of the visits. You'll have to go to hospital a number of years, a number of times a year. So that's coming there. But what we offer is a kind of drug discovery solution, right? So we can not only develop new drugs for a patient, which is kind of pretty far-fetched promise, but we can identify existing solutions, repurposing candidates for existing drugs that might be efficacious, especially in case of kind of devastating diseases with unclear kind of treatment plan. There is no kind of available treatment option. So we can use these platforms to kind of tackle those kind of unmet medical needs without a treatment option. So rapidly screen millions of compounds in a database, identify what works on the cells, real cells from patients, and treat them.
So I have a question regarding the generative modeling component. So beyond you did some patents and research in this space, but in practice, have you used that actually in some practice, some medical practice to, I would say, help in some way, even if limited, in exploring the possible space of drugs for certain issue, protein, or something like that?
Yeah. As a company, we not only develop platforms, right? So in order for us to develop and integrate a model, we have to validate it experimentally. So we go into the lab, we synthesize the generated molecules in the lab, we make actual physical molecules, we test those molecules in cells and animals onwards, and we validate the model. So each model has been validated experimentally. So we have experimental.
How do you validate it?
How
do you validate it?
Synthesize and test. So the generative model generates a graph, molecular structure. You do chemical synthesis, you generate the structure, you test it on enzymatic assays, make sure it binds to the target it is designed for. Then you go into cell-based assays, animal models of efficacy. So you have oncology, animal models like PDX model, see whether it affects the tumor growth.
And are these for cases that you know a priori that the shell binds, so that you expect the binding to happen or not?
This is entirely imagined novel structures, unseen before.
Okay.
So you imagine a universe, chemical universe. We have our solar system, which we know, right? So we have billions of compounds we know the structures of and properties of, but we don't know what's out there. So there are 10 to the power of 80 different molecules, right? So you use these generative models to launch Voyagers into this chemical space, unexplored chemical space, and identify those new structures that you can synthesize.
That space is huge, right? So how do you characterize the space where these the current algorithms happen to be effective versus those cases where it could be limited, the effect?
We use reinforcement learning to enable this, right? So we have a reward pipeline, which acts as a kind of navigation system for those Voyagers. So if we generate a molecule, we see that it's not the reward score, the reward is not great, right? So it's kind of doesn't have all the properties needed. They change the direction, change the course, and go into other, let's say, chemical galaxy with a different set of properties that might be more suitable. So all the generative models, we not only have a reinforcement learning cycle with reward module, but they also talk to each other. So different Voyagers.
With human in the loop, right? That's with human in the loop, right?
No.
No,
Humans
okay.
don't
Are not in the loop.
not involved at all.
Okay.
So entire process is computational. It takes 2 to 3 days to go through millions of reinforcement learning cycles, and you identify those kind of small, kind of new solar systems with tractable chemotypes.
How large the data used to train such a model?
Not large, so you can pre-train the model on a few million molecules with known properties. You just have to use like multiple representations of molecules and have molecules annotated by properties. So you have predictive models that are used in reward pipeline that evaluate the newly generated molecule in terms of properties and provide a score. If it fits the configuration set up by a medicinal chemist before the generation is started, then it receives high reward, and you kind of explore around this molecule.
What do you mean by multiple representations? And is the reward is just binding or not, or it's more than that?
Yeah, I mean, pre-training happens on the data set, right? So, and the data set is a set of like millions of structures represented in strings. So smile strings, for instance, or fingerprints, or graph format. And you use those representations to train the model, and those representations are linked to activity, right? So this string is active against target X, but not active against target Y. So that's kind of how we train the models, both predictive and generative. And but the reinforcement learning cycle, it happens without human interference, right? So it's automatic.
But with human-defined reward function?
Of course. So
Okay.
that's how we ensure that we capture the knowledge of medicinal chemists. So they know that specific properties are important for molecule to be, to be developable, to enter humans. They know that certain, bioavailability is necessary. So how well the molecule is absorbed into bloodstream from the gut, right? So if you swallow the pill, like what is the rate of kind of the conversion of the molecule into the bloodstream, right? So bioavailability or solubility or other characteristics. So those important characteristics are defined by medicinal chemists, and predictive models are based on those kind of recommendations of medicinal chemists, right? So we need a predictive model for this, for this, for this. And that's how we capture kind of a human knowledge aspect of it. Like, ChatGPT needs annotation from human experts on the generated texts. This is a similar kind of logic we capture in silico in the predictive modules.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, and just to check, are there any questions from the participants online? Okay, great. All right, if there are no other questions, let's thank the speaker once more. Okay, so it is now time for our lunch break. The lunch will be at the same place on the first day, which is the Rosalita restaurant just down that way. And we will reconvene here at 1:45 p.m. for the final session of the workshop. And see you all.